welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, V.
And Sean. We interview people in the creative industries about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on our social medias if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
Today, we have with us Blake Lemons.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Hey.
Hi, Blake. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I do love the podcast. So many great people from animation on here, and I'm happy and excited and proud to be a part of it now.
Wow. Thank you. I think what's really cool is that you've hopped around all over like animation. You've done boards, you've done writing, and you've done producing. Which one is your favorite thing to do?
Oh, wow. That's a terrific question. So, yeah, definitely my heart is in boards, of course, right? That's where we all start and where we kind of fall in love with the medium, with this kind of storytelling. And I do think it's also the first, someone said when I was first starting my career, when I was an intern, a storyboard artist told me that they liked it because they felt like they were the first director on their episode or on their, even though director wasn't in their title, they're really shaping the visual language, if not writing the episode. And so yeah, my heart's really in that. I've also found over time that I have this strength in managing and directing. And so, I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed the mentorship part. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I've learned like I'm good at the mentor side of leadership, and I enjoy that. Did not expect it, but I do.
Yeah, that's fun that you're bringing up that you didn't expect it, because I feel like when we go to art school, we might not really realize what it means to direct. Can you tell us what art school you went to?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a bit of a story, but I'll just stick with that. I ended up at Pratt Institute in New York City, there in Brooklyn, the wonderful borough of Brooklyn. And yeah, it was amazing. So I grew up in Texas. I grew up in Arlington, Texas, which is like a suburb of Dallas. And, the arts aren't very focused upon much in Texas. So I don't think I ever really thought about art as being a career until I was in high school. And I was in my high school art class, and these other kids that had graduated and gone off, a couple of them came back and talked to our class. And that was when, I think it was like a sophomore or a junior or something. I was like, wait a second. Like, there's a whole world out there of people that do this stuff. And, it takes people to make these things. It was surprising to me as a little Texan boy. And so, yeah, I had some awesome parents. I don't know if I'll touch upon that again. I would love to, because they were very supportive and helpful in me going the path that I went. But I ended up in Brooklyn. I ended up at Pratt. And the cool thing about Pratt for me was that it's really, at least back then, so I was like 2001 through 2005, I was at Pratt. And back then, especially, it was very like fine arts kind of art school. So there wasn't a lot of animation people, but I wasn't actually an animation major. I was an illustration major in the communication design department. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing for me was that I was able to explore all sorts of different parts of art school. I could go take all sorts of, sculpture classes or silkscreen printing classes, and then go over and do my animation classes and do my illustration classes. I was able to explore. And part of that, which I'm sure we'll dig into, because it's my path from there to the industry, was I did some internships. And that's really how I got into the industry. But backing up real quick, I wanted to say that the amazing thing for me at Pratt was that it was this fine arts school that I could explore, like I just laid out. The negative was that I didn't have the focus that, say, like a Cal Arts student or a. Sorry, I'm totally gonna focus on the U.S. here. I know there are so many great art schools all over the place. Or what's the one right here in Pasadena? Art Center.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the focus that I think a lot of those students had, and so I had to work hard after graduating to really figure out my place in the industry, what my strengths were, and learn a lot of those skills. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring up these kind of like larger schools, because I feel like, do you feel like there's anything in particular that has served you in your career later, the fact that it was so big and you were able to try so many different things?
You know, I think that the answer should be absolutely yes, and it's going to take me a minute to kind of give examples, but, you know, I also like one of my closest friends from art school, he did a couple different things, but he went on to be a musician. He has a band that, you know, he has a following, he tours, it's his life, and he's incredibly talented. And so while I was there, we also did a lot of music. Right. And so I would say that because I'm not especially naturally talented, naturally gifted with music. Right. It's something that I've had to learn as well. But I think through that experience with him and some other friends of like really, you know, I will say Pratt gave us the room, right, to explore this and meet each other. But I learned a lot about music, and that's applied a lot to what I do. I mean, Arlo itself, the movie, was a musical. And then the series that I made afterwards had, I think it was every episode or every other episode had an original song that we essentially did a music video for. So I would say that, but also I spent that time doing that music and learning like editing for that kind of, for like editing for everything from video to audio like that. And so I'd say that really applied in everything that I laid out with Arlo. And also I should say that the other shows I've made, there's always been songs. It's always, we storyboard artists always love to throw in a song to our episodes if we can.
It feels so good to pitch it and have it actually go in, because it doesn't always work.
Yeah,
it doesn't always work, but it's nice to get those residuals if you can get them, right?
Absolutely. And also, have you ever like pitched it and like it's an original song for your story and you have to sing in the room with everyone there?
Yup.
Oh my God. I didn't know you did that, Blake. I like obviously
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
Well,
I feel like I'm always so jealous of like you guys when I think, you know, like board artists who can do it all, like draw and play music and like write the songs. I'm like, oh, you're ahead of the game.
well, that's kind of, I think it's giving me more credit than is due, but I very much appreciate it. I'll say that I'm probably tone deaf, so my singing is horrible. But here's the thing, and I think that this is based on what you just said there. I think this is something interesting that when we write those songs, when storyboard artists / writers write those songs that end up in these episodes, you know, a lot of times maybe we build it off of a song that we already know, right? Like, I'm going to give an example from Sanjay and Craig. I did this episode called Day of the Snake, and it's all about Craig the snake trying to prove to Sanjay that he has a cool life when Sanjay's off at school. It's the only time in their lives that they're separate. And so Craig's like really trying to prove through the whole episode. And at the end, he, of course, like, you know, gives up and says, like, no, my life's totally lame without you. And there's the song that I wrote for it.
Aww.
That is based on, if you remember, Bryan Adams' song, Everything I Do It For You. That was in the, like...
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was based on that, and it was called Everything Cool I Do With You. And so I wrote it based on, like, that song structure, and I pitched it with that. And then... Once all my bosses and the Nickelodeon executives signed off saying like, this is awesome, or saying this is cool, let's do it, then it goes to a composer who typically takes like the lyrics that we write and then the idea, right? Like it's something like Bryan Adams, right? And then they compose something brand new that, you know, doesn't step on the trademark or copyright of the original song, but also sounds brand new and exciting for the audience, you know?
Yeah.
No, it's great to hear about like that process too, because I feel like sometimes it can be like daunting for people to pitch songs if they let's say they want to have a song in their episode, but they don't have any like musical talent or whatever. Like the way you just kind of went about it, like the way you're talking about it, that's like a great first entry point into that thought process, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You were talking about internships earlier, and then I went on the tangent. But what internships did you do?
Oh, absolutely. So yes, I was in art school from 2001 to 2005, and I think it was the summer of 2003 that I did my first internship. So this was all in New York City. New York City in the early 2000s. It wasn't a lot of animation jobs, but there was some. And New York's gone through waves since then, but there was a studio. My first internship was a studio called 4Kids Entertainment, I think is what it was called, like the number 4 Kids Entertainment. And they owned a bunch of stuff, but one of the things that they were making there was actually the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I can't tell you which version it was because there's been so many, but the early 2000s version of the Ninja Turtles. And I was in first grade when the first version of the Turtles came out. So like I was, as far as the interns go, as far as like my art school college experience goes, I was like, whoa, the Ninja Turtles, this is the best thing ever. I'm in New York City and
it has to be made here. They live here.
We're going to eat pizza, skateboard. So that was my first internship. And what I got out of that was I met a number of folks that, just from that one job. There's the whole crew was very kind and just like, would invite me out to lunches and after work, going to get drinks. And I mean, I was a college student, so I don't think I could afford it, but I did it anyway. And so that led to my second internship the very next summer, which was with Codename Kids Next Door for Cartoon Network. And
so cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It was at this other studio called Curious Pictures, and I'll try to start streamlining. I might be telling too many stories here. So yeah, that was at Curious Pictures. It was Codename Kids Next Door, and it was the creator of that. It was Tom Warburton. I think he goes by Mr. Warburton as his credit. And when I was interning, I just like really clicked with the crew and with Tom, the creator, the showrunner, and he asked me if I wanted to be his essentially his personal assistant. and so straight out of art school, I was Tom's personal assistant, which meant I did everything from going to get him lunch to, it was New York City. So I will admit there's no union there. So I would do board revisions, and also something really cool that I got to do while I was there was he would invite me to go into the editorial bay with him and his editor, and they would cut the episodes right there. And I mean, whoa. I learned, so just in those early years, I learned what it's like to cut a story, to watch something that you expected to work and it not work. And you'd be like, okay, how can we fix this? We have 3 days. How do we fix this?
Wow.
And it was really cool. And I appreciate if Tom listens to this. I appreciate it like crazy. I still see him every now and then. And I have made so many episodes of television since in my career, and all of my knowledge in editorial comes from, started there. I'm going to throw in, I feel really weird saying, I made so many episodes of television. It sounds really cocky. But I'm trying to give credit to Tom,
Yeah.
That is so cool. Wow. Yeah, because I feel like, I don't know if we've talked a lot. I mean, we did the Mackenzie episode where we talk about editing for cartoons for people listening, but I feel like editing isn't mentioned a lot online or on the internet, because it's kind of this almost invisible art of because you're not drawing, but you're timing everything and making sure everything kind of makes sense together. And I don't know, like you said, it's such a cornerstone in the process, mm-hmm. where you ask for the last minute revisions. So you saw that during your first internship, and then when you storyboarded for the first time and you weren't in edit, was that kind of weird?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely many years between those two things of that first experience and then doing my first storyboard on my own. But it's definitely weird because, we all really care about what we do, and we all really care about the characters that we work with and the stories that we tell. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that it's going to probably change from what you're doing there in your little mm-hmm. office or cubicle or wherever you may be, you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears in it. But the tough thing to keep in mind, especially in those early first couple boards, is it's going to change, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to nail it, even if you've got decades of experience. That might sound bad or mean the way that I said that, but it's something to keep in mind is that sometimes animation is collaboration, right? And so we all, you know, maybe we're collaborating on that story, but then you're also collaborating with your director and your supervising director and your producers and all of that. And so yeah, I kind of jumped off what you're saying there, V, a little bit, but I think like to what you're saying of like knowing that it's going to change, like that's important. That's a big lesson in anywhere in animation, is that everything that we do, you know, can change in a heartbeat. Be ready to throw out your drawings, you know? So, yeah.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah. That is so true. And we've all been through it here. So, you know.
Absolutely.
Dude, there's so many in our minds. There's just an infinite graveyard of scrapped drawings and jokes and songs and like whole characters. Like I've pitched so many characters that just like, you know, they got cut. I mean, at the end of the day, being a board artist in some places means you have to sort of shelf it. It's like this fine line in between like giving it your all and fully believing in yourself that that you are the show, you are the scene, this is like you're gonna make it, you're making the best stuff ever, and then simultaneously stepping back and dissociating and setting your ego back so that potentially in the final thing, none of your actual drawings may end up in it. None of your actual poses might end up in it, and your scene might have just been the springboard for what came later.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And like, I think right now, and I'm happy to talk about this, of course, with the safety of not, you know, divulging the project that I'm working on right now or anything like that. But, you know, I've stepped back into a story artist role now, and I'm loving it. But it's also, Sean, like you're saying there, it's I have to keep in mind, like, you know, my drawings might not end up in the final, you know, edit.
Right.
But another story artist that we work with, you know, has said it, and I'm probably going to misquote him, but has said something about like, it's about ideation, right? It's about coming up with ideas and putting them out there. And if one sticks, then you're successful. If it ends up not being your drawing, you're still successful, you know?
That is so true. Especially for feature. I think I feel like the biggest difference between, because that happens in TV as well, pitching stuff, especially in board driven, and then stuff getting scrapped. But I feel like in feature, it's like times 100. Yeah, I
agree with you.
Yeah, oh man, there's so much to talk about.
We got right into the scariest parts about. Sorry, we got. I mean, but that's the first thing that you kind of learn as a storyboard artist. Like when you're in school, you're like, all your drawings are gonna make it, and you're gonna make the show, and they just color in your drawings, and then it's great. And then that's one of the first big things that you have to confront. I think.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
I don't know if you've also had that, Blake, but there's also some shows where like a lot of the stuff that you do ends up in the final product. Like I know personally in my career, sometimes it's been hard, like going onto a show where like most of the stuff that you do, like 99% of the stuff that you do ends up making it in the final cut. Like some of the stuff, some of the stuff gets cut, but all of the rest makes it. And so you're so happy on top of the world. But then the next show you go to is not the case.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
You never know. You never know. But you're absolutely right. There's, you know, we are definitely giving the scariest version with our previous description. Like also like a ton of Sanjay and Craig, you know, a ton of the show, of the episodes of the show Home, Adventures of Tip and O, a ton of those episodes I can look at and be like, oh wow, there's my drawing. You know, even though it's gone through animation, there is my storyboards at the base of it, and the animation studio that has animated it since then used my boards as reference. So you know, it's really strange to look back and watch an episode and be like, whoa, that looks like I drew. Oh right, I did draw the first panel of that. I did draw. So it is cool to not scare the audience about losing all your work. Like a lot of times, you know, a lot of the episodes that I've made, I can look back at and just feel feel my hand through majority of the episode or the majority of the episode that I drew. Because again, collaboration, right? Like there's, I do think like I've done mostly board driven stuff. And I do think that the board driven shows that I've been on that have been partner, like team board driven, two people making like an 11-minute episode together. Like that's been the strongest because you have someone to work with, someone to bounce ideas off of, and they have half of the board to draw on, right? And you have half of the board to draw on, right? So, yeah.
I want to talk about how it was like the moment when you graduated from college and you were looking for your first gig. What was that moment like?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I graduated. I did have that, assistant job with Tom on Cody and Kids Next Door right out of school, and I was lucky in that. But I also recognized it was my foot in the door, right? And it was an opportunity to learn. And so I was doing it, and then halfway through, I did it for a year, and halfway through that year, I said to Tom, hey, just looking at my future, I'm going to move to LA. Keep in mind, we were in the heart of Manhattan at that moment. And so he was supportive. And, I did manage to make some contacts with some Cartoon Network people through that job. And so I was pretty confident that moving out to LA was going to pan out and that I could make my way, I'm going to touch upon that I did get a little bit of negative energy, from a couple of people in New York that were just kind of like, that were just saying, are you sure that you want to move to LA instead of staying in the industry in New York? It's very competitive out there, and you've got all the CalArts kids to compete against.
Interesting. Whoa. Scary. Yeah. I thought you were going to say that they were going to, because what I heard up until now is like in New York, when you say you're going to move to LA, especially if you come from the comics community, I hear a lot of people being like, you're selling it out. So I thought that's what they were going to say.
No, it's funny because it's almost, I wonder if it's like something that you don't realize until you're on the outside. But I had always heard that there were more studios and more jobs in LA, and that it was less competitive and in New York, it was a bunch of people fighting over like a less jobs, and that it was harder to and at the time, especially because the union stuff wasn't around, I think that in general a lot of the New York animators didn't make quite as much as the LA people.
Yeah, I think you're accurate.
And I could be wrong. Right. You can correct me. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I remember even at the same studio, if there was like a studio with the same company in New York and in LA, they would be paid different.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. And I think you're absolutely right about the selling out thing too, V. And Sean, you're right about the pay difference, right? Yeah, I think that what I'm describing might just be uniquely the couple of people that I was talking to, and maybe their own insecurities about the idea of moving to LA or whatever. But yes, Sean, you're right. The pay was less back then. I don't know now. I know that Titmouse out there is unionized, at least. I'm not sure. I'm sure other people out there know more. But yeah, I guess
I don't know. All I was saying is I don't want what I'm saying to come off wrong. I meant to say that like for a long time I think it was hard to make cartoons in New York. And I'm from Philly, and I considered moving to New York, and I had weighed those possibilities, and I just had heard how competitive it was in New York, and that it was kind of rough for animation in New York a little bit. So I meant it more as it was hard over there than this city is better than, I don't know.
Yeah. No, totally. And I might be writing my own question with this, but in another podcast that I listened to, they always ask the question of, have you ever had the experience of someone telling you you're never going to make it? You should, give up. And I think I think that was my moment of like someone in New York City industry saying like, are you sure you want to go out there? It's going to be hard. I don't, it was more than just, it's going to be hard, but that was my moment. And,
interesting. Wow. Yeah. So that was, they were tasting your faith. They were like, you got to be like, oh my gosh. Yeah. That's kind of scary when someone's like, not scary in a mean way, but like to you being on the receiving end of that. Yeah. It's like a moment when you're really thinking about it, right? Or maybe you were just like, nope, I believe in this and I'm gonna be fine.
I had a lot of self-doubt, I'll be honest, but I was 23 or something like that. I was like, let's just do this. I'm only 23 once in my life, right? And so to jump back onto your original question, I believe it was about like going from that graduating to the first job. So I just wanted to say that like I went ahead and I made that leap. I drove across the country and moved to LA. I moved here July 1st, 18 years ago. I'm keeping count.
Your LA-versary.
It is. I'm excited because it's going to be 18, which I'm like, okay, that's how many years I lived in Texas. I can officially say that I'm more of a Californian than anything else. So. Wow,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So I moved out here and I had contacts. I really thought it was going to work out. Well, I guess at 23, I just really thought it was going to work out quickly, right? Between the contacts that I made at that first internship and job to a couple other like friends that made it out to LA and stuff, I really thought it was going to move more quickly than it did. And I ended up, I went to a a temp agency. That's what they're called, a temp agency. And I took a bunch of temp jobs because like it had been a couple of months and I was just still trying to meet people. Like even places like Titmouse had only just opened, and all that. And so so I did temp a little bit. And then quite honestly, yes, the contacts that I had at Cartoon Network were very helpful, and I got a couple interviews over at Cartoon Network, and I ended up just with a PA job at Cartoon Network, but I worked really hard taking all of the board tests that they had in the studio at the time and really trying to push myself and learn this craft. And so it took some time. It took a lot of hard work, but I went from that PA job to revisionist on Chowder and then just kind of kept going from there. So, yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. By the way, for people listening, make sure you check out the episode that we had with Carl Greenblatt. Who created Chowder. So it's a fun episode too. Oh my gosh. So did you feel like when you were doing revisions for Codename Kids Next Door, did you feel like that was similar to what you were doing on Chowder, or was there like a difference there?
Yeah, I think that there is a difference. The little bit of revisions that I did with Codename was very, I think Tom did do a good job of knowing what story he wanted to tell, and then following through with that in Edit Bay, and the fixes were, pretty surgical is my memory. And then, so once it got to revisions, my memory is mostly that it was plussing and fine-tuning and things like that. So, and I was very green, so I only got what they trusted me with. But Chowder and Carl's incredible. I love Carl Greenblatt. And, even in revisions on Chowder, it was still creative, I guess, right? Like it was oftentimes we'd have to rethink a whole sequence to half of a story to, and that kind of fell upon the revisionists to work with Carl or the supervising director to figure that out and to execute it. And again, I was still green, but it was an incredible experience.
Oh yeah, so you were as a revisionist on a board-driven show, you were definitely storyboarding pretty much.
Yeah, it was basically like it was more creative in a lot of ways. We would, if we had a sequence or half of a board or whatever that wasn't quite working. Again, I was still green, so it was Carl and his supervising director that would like work through it and work with me, but or whoever else was the revisionist at the time. But yeah, I would work with them directly, and they would point me in the right direction because I was still green. I was revisionist, but I was able to come up with gags. I was able to work with characters for the, truly for the first time, the way that we do with storyboards, where you really sink into that character and kind of try to think of yourself as that character and make decisions and feel emotions and draw these things into your boards. That was my first taste of doing that, was on Chowder, and I think I had hits and misses, but I learned a lot.
Yeah, I feel like, I like to ask because I feel like the revisionist position sometimes, I mean, just like every position, like change so much from a show to another.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to ask you as well, like, so we've kind of like seen how like you went to school, you got your first job, and then like, do you, because you ended up producing on Arlo, which is like pretty much like show running, right?
Yeah.
Was that something that you always wanted to do?
That's a great question, because I was anticipating it. And that's a tough one, right? I was thinking about it, and I think that because we all got into this because we wanted to make things and we wanted to tell stories. And I think that because my first experience as an assistant was with Tom Warburton, who is the creator and showrunner of his show, I think, and this is a positive thing, but I think that it just like got in my head right away. Like that is the goal. That is where you want to end up, And yeah, and then I kind of continued with my career, and I was enjoying all this writing and storyboarding, and I was having my highs and having my lows and just living life, and it felt great. I don't mean to make it sound like I lucked into it, but I do think like the opportunities to manage, and I think this is an interesting topic that I'll just briefly touch upon here, but totally excited to talk about it more if we get to it. I think the opportunities to manage like showed themselves. They came up, and I guess in my head I had like, well, showrunner is like the goal, and this would be the path to it. So like, let's do it, right? And so I moved into leadership. I moved into like directing, supervising, directing, all that kind of stuff. And I found that I thrived in it. I think I said earlier, like I discovered that I like mentoring, that I like that, and so I think over time I discovered that I wanted to be a showrunner. But I think the subject that I was flagging as like maybe cool to talk about eventually also is that like we all went to art school, right? like none of us took management classes. None of us took
right.
Yes.
It's a whole extra skill for sure.
Yeah.
Right? So that was and so I also want to say that I'm not saying that I was immediately good at it or that I was a natural. It's that I discovered joy in it, So it wasn't always the goal, but every time that the opportunity arose to head towards showrunner, it seemed like, oh, this is the path, And I appreciate it. I very much enjoyed every single one of those roles, and that led to showrunning. And I had the best time ever showrunning. It was everything that I'd hoped it to be, even though I technically show ran through a pandemic.
Oh yeah, that must have been so tough.
It was stressful, but it was everything that I wanted it to be, and everything that I hope to do again one day. But I definitely, and I'll be happy to talk about this more too if you'd like, but I definitely came out of it. And I can't say that I had the clarity right away, but I discovered over a couple of months or a year that I needed to step back a little bit. I needed a break. I needed to get back to the drawing. I needed to get back to the storyboarding trenches and find joy in that again. So
what triggered that thought for you, where you were like, oh, I need to storyboard again?
I think there's a lot there, but I think that, like I said, it was pandemic. So I was also sorting through, we all sorted through all sorts of crazy stuff through the height of lockdown and everything. And I think I came out of that kind of like a little emotionally overwhelmed with everything. And I wanted to kind of pare it back. I also mentioned V knows that I talk about my daughter way too much. She's so cool. She writes and draws her own graphic novels at the age of 7.5. and I'm so lucky to have a cool kid. But the same time that I was rolling out of showrunning Arlo, the series for Arlo was I Heart Arlo, and that was what I showran. When I was rolling out of I Heart Arlo was when my daughter was going into kindergarten. And so there was also this, like, you know, desire that I had of just being present, you know, being the way that I've said it to my friends is yeah, that was me going like, oh wait, do I want everyone in animation to hear it the same way? And you know what? I do. The way that I said it to my friends is like, you know, I think that I don't want to be, for a little bit, I don't want to be the Blake Lemons that spends his nights and his weekends working on a development project that he's going to pitch and hope gets bought. I'm going to be the Blake Lemons that takes his daughter camping, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so,
that is so I love the way you're saying it, because it shows like the kind of choices you have to make as a creator in animation. And like you said, it's like your daughter is so important and being a parent is so important, and sometimes that means like maybe putting a project aside for a little bit. That's so cool. Yeah, and I kind of wanted to ask you eventually about like being a parent too, and working in animation, because I feel like working in animation, I mean, I feel like Sean and I are kind of like also the living proof of like how much work it is all the time.
Right on, yeah.
So I love talking to parents in animation, because I feel like that's not talked about a lot, and it is sometimes a concern I hear from like millennials or like or even younger generations in animation, like, oh, can I, you know, how do I manage, you know, to do both, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's tough, and I will say, so yeah, you know, I guess pre-child I was V. My wife's name is V as well. V and I, you know, wherever we were living through LA, we always, just out of luck, we found that we could carpool to work. So our entire careers here, we carpooled to work, and we would be at the studio, you know, I don't know, 8 or 9 in the morning every day until at least 6 p.m. And then, yeah, sorry, that was a tangent just to kind of set up that then we decided to have a kid, and we ended up having a kid. And for those first couple of years, having Ellie, you know, she was in daycare and preschool, and like that stuff is all day long. I don't know if these are details that you don't want to hear, V, but
no, I think that's great. I don't know. I feel like
It's part of your
it's just
story.
like, yeah, and it's a topic we haven't really talked about on the pod, and I think it's really important. It's something that's on a lot of like people's mind, honestly.
Yeah.
So
so those first couple of years were like, the balance was easy in those first couple of years, to be honest with you, because she was in daycare, preschool, and we were able to kind of continue that same studio time that I was just saying.
mm-hmm.
But, you know, in some ways we got that's a horrible sentence, Blake. In some ways we got lucky with COVID.
Oh, yeah. No, but you're right in the sense that like that's something that I heard from a lot of parents as well, that who were like, oh, I mean, for a very specific age range, right? I feel like if you had a kid who was 8 years old, it was a nightmare working and taking care of the kid. But if your kid was young enough, then you could spend more time with them, and they were like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, she was like 3.5 when COVID hit, and she came home with us, and we worked from home 100%, and basically took care of her and balanced all that. And I won't get into all the details because there was like parents coming, or our parents, you know, her grandparents coming to help and things like that. But it did help us learn how to be ready for where she is now, which is, you know, she's nearly 8. And, you know, she goes to school and all that, but like the difference is that when she was 1 or less than 1 through 3, it was like full day daycare. And then now she's at public school, and it's, you know, 8 a.m. drop off, pickup is at 2 p.m. And yeah, that's a hard balance for, you know, there's always programs, you know, after school programs and stuff, but that's a hard balance for anyone, but especially in animation. I feel like we're lucky, though, right now in this post-COVID time of just how friendly everyone is with hybrid work and with, remote work. Like I do go pick up my daughter at 2:00, not every day. V and I trade off responsibilities, but I'll pick up Ellie, I'll bring her home and get her going. And then I'll start back at work. And if I've missed out on an hour or something, then I'll make it up at night. And, I hope, I think my production understands that. The show that I'm working on understands that, that there's that balance.
I wonder, I feel like, because I'm trying to remember guests who I talked with about like parenting, and I remember the Grover Tunes episode where he said that having kids helped him be way more focused with work. Do you feel that's true for you?
I think... Yeah, he said that having kids helped him be way more focused. Was that? I think I listened to this on your podcast, right? It was.
It was like when you're working because you have to clock out and
Yeah, because then he was like, well, then I have to, like, I want to spend time with my kids. So I'm allowing myself to work until like the specific time. And I was like, man, that is so powerful.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Like when I'm working, and then I will say that the hard part is like flipping that switch, right? Like, especially hats off to the previous guest if they are good at this, but if I'm in a tough spot on a story and I'm sitting down building a Lego tower with my daughter, my brain's probably going to step over a little bit and think about that tough story point, Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like you're doing this thing that is like that you can focus on a little bit, but your brain is not entirely, like consumed by the Lego tower. So you can be thinking about a story at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You're not taking work home with you. The work stays home with you because you're working from home. I mean, that's a whole other separation of home and work.
Yeah, Sean, you're 100% right about that. I was talking about that with another story artist just today about like hybrid work's great, remote work is great, but the difficult thing is that the line has blurred even more, and I had to someone that I had worked with or was working with texted me a question about like the story on like a Saturday, and I had to be like, yo, I'm at Legoland. I'm not. So anyway, yeah.
That's funny.
I had a question about it sort of seems like we went from revisionist on Chowder to all of a sudden you're a director.
Right.
And I do want to, because for a lot of people, the pathway from storyboard artist or revisionist to director is like an infinite, like how do you even how do you do that? So it doesn't need to be like, talking about every single show you've ever worked on to climb that, but how would you describe how your ascent was done?
Yeah, I think that it was about doing the hard work and about the long hours, I hate to say that sentence, and showing determination to not necessarily get it right, but to get it better, to always strive for making your episodes better. So when I was a revisionist, I was always working towards making my revisions better or making the episode better. So if I was doing a revision and I saw an opportunity for a gag, or if I saw something that rubbed me wrong with the story, even though I was a revisionist, I would try to find a way to come up to my director, my supervising director, and express my concern and like lay out, like, I think that the story might be, going off the rails right here, or we might, the character's motivation I think gets a little off here. What if I did this? Not just coming with a problem, but coming with an answer. And it wasn't always the right answer either, right? But at least I was coming with spotting the problem and having a solution. And then sometimes that solution worked, or more often they would give me their solution. And that was a learning experience. And so by bringing that every time, that made it so that by bringing that to my revisions, that showed them that I was thinking bigger and that I was ready for story artist, right? And the same goes with when I was a story artist. doing episodes, and quite honestly, my first couple of episodes as a story artist / writer, they bombed. They sucked, and some of them were never even produced. But I learned from that, and I was constantly striving to make them better and try to just become better. And eventually, after doing that many times, I showed that same energy that I was showing in revisions, I was showing in story art, and that led to, okay, well, what if Blake went into, it was directing in animatic, right? So it'd be like, it wasn't directing episodic. It was more of like being in that animatic room, and if an episode wasn't working, then I would be the one that fixed it. And so yeah, so it was kind of like baby's first step into directing, right?
And was this all on one show for this first sort of climb, or was this over several shows? This
was 2 shows. So I was revisions on Chowder, which led to revisions on a Disney show called Fish Hooks, and through that I became a story artist / writer, and because we were board-driven shows. And then I moved over to SpongeBob, actually, for that animatic director. I'd have to look at IMDb or something to know the exact title, but it was something like animatic director, or maybe at first it was assistant animatic director and then animatic director. But the SpongeBob folks kind of had a pipeline. They had this, I backfilled someone else that had left, and so they had it all figured out. And so they're like, I'd been recommended by someone that I was working with at Fish Hooks, and then I met with the SpongeBob folks and interviewed and did a test, and just kind of from word of mouth of, from the people that I was working with on Fish Hooks, and then from my test and my interviews, they're like, all right, we think that you are showing the skill set and the drive to try to like make an episode as good as possible in the way that we need this animatic director to do. And so I did that, and, just like anything, there's its ups and its downs and all that, but I'm definitely a broken record in saying, like, it was that same energy from being a revisionist and constantly trying to make the episode as good as possible and flagging things that weren't working, that I was doing that same thing in that animatic director job, and that led to episodic director. And after, like, I think 2 seasons of episodic directing for not SpongeBob anymore. At this point, I'm on Sanjay and Craig. That ended up leading to supervising director, and this is where I'm going to end the story, Sean. But that is where I want to say, like, that there is, the opportunity came up, right? Like, right time, right place, right time, right? Like, I had been doing all this hard work, and it wasn't that I had some grand plan, but there was an opportunity that came up, and I'd been doing the hard work, and they had seen that, and so they were like, Blake, you've been directing, and it's going well. We think that you have the leadership chops to do the supervising directing thing, and I appreciate it because I ended up really loving that job. So
that is so cool. How do you define, or at least, because I feel like episodic directing and supervising directing, these roles are kind of what you make of it. From talking with a lot of folks on the podcast, I feel like everybody's got their own philosophy about it. What is your philosophy on both these different positions? So both the episodic directing and then the supervising directing.
Yeah, I think episodic directing for me was, again, in the board-driven world, it was about breaking that story with a small team. It was usually just me and one story artist. And, like, the way that the episodic director was treated was that we were the leadership of our little team. So really it was like me, one story artist. We were a storytelling duo, right? We'd break the story together. But then there was also revisionists that we would bring into the fold and assign sequences to. So I would say my philosophy with that was, with episodic directing at that time, was it was collaborative, and that I softly took, I'm going to say it this way, softly took the reins of, like, we're collaborating, but I have, as director, the final say, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's an interesting balance between that, right? You're collaborating, you're part of a team, but you also have to be, at the end of the day, if the episode doesn't work, you're the director, right? So
Yeah.
You have to be decisive. It has
Yeah.
to feel like one story. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so with that, I was just working with my small team of my story artist collaborator and then the revisionist that we would work with as well. So, and then going over to the supervising director from there, it was dropping all, you know, I didn't stop drawing, but you, in the version of supervising director that I had, I was responsible for like 5 teams, right? And I should back up real quick. I was a part of a supervising duo. It was myself and one other person, Matt Lazell. Everyone,
Oh,
yeah,
I love Matt Lazell.
He's the best.
He's so good.
He's so talented and such a sweet guy, and I was very lucky to be partners with him in this. So he and I were responsible for the whole 5 or 6 team crew for a couple of seasons of Sanjay and Craig. And philosophy-wise, to your question, V, it was difficult because Matt and I were both used to having our hands directly in the episodes. And as a supervising director, you kind of have to, like, it's steering the ship. It's maybe less than steering. It's kind of like pointing in a certain direction and saying, steer your ship towards that, right? And so
it's like a bunch of little guys holding the wheel.
Yeah.
Like you guys are like, you have no chance of doing this without me telling you to all go left or whatever, but you guys are all
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that was, you know, my first experience really with that full big level of management. And I learned a lot. I think I did some things well, and then I learned from the things that I didn't do well. But I will say that Matt and I also had the opportunity to, you know, like after the story artists are done, it goes into editorial, and that was where we really had more time with each episode. We were able to dip our hands into it some more, and sometimes they're great episodes and you just don't want to touch them. Sometimes you have to touch them, and sometimes you just really want to. So yeah. So I'd say philosophy wise, it was about, like you're saying, like letting them steer that ship, but also like finding your opportunities to still get your creative satisfaction out of the role. It's in those management roles, I think like it's important to find those opportunities where you can still hop in, because so much of that job is about about pointing people in the right direction and helping them get to the right creative place to make the show that you're trying to make. And doing that is creative itself. I don't want to sound like I'm not saying that, but like, you know, we're all artists. Like I still want to draw parts of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that must be so hard. I think because I've definitely been, I guess, a episode director and storyboard artist. I've seen kind of both types of leaderships, where there's like some leaderships where it's just like just words, like, oh, I kind of see it more like this, but then I see other kind of leaderships where it's like, oh, I'm actually going to draw over this whole scene, and you get the drawings directly from sometimes the showrunner, which is also really cool, but must be also extremely time consuming and hard on the showrunner to do that, right?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, showrunners are also balancing out like all of the post stuff too, right? Like I think we've all probably experienced the like showrunner that through season 1 is like super active through storyboard, like outline or script writing, and then into storyboards. And then when that's through season 1 of pre-production, and then season 2 starts and you're like, everyone's excited and the showrunner still wants to be doing the same thing, but then, you know, post comes and showrunner has to be in the edit bay and locking episodes, you know, doing take 1s, take 2s, take 3s, and then going to mixes and sound effect spotting and, you know, all that stuff. And so I've just seen many times in my career just like a showrunner go from being like very active in doing draw overs and things like that in season 1 to season 2, like going like, oh my gosh, I wish I could still be there doing draw overs or working with you in story, but I'm locking this episode right now, you know?
Yeah.
That is so crazy. Yeah.
I mean, it's almost an unfair position that these networks or schedules put the supervising director in a little bit, like, especially because there are many circumstances where I feel like there's like low-key an expectation that you do a certain amount of drawing too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not always, but
Yeah.
that's a hard place to put you in, and it's no wonder why a lot of supervising directors kind of go into guiding with words more than drawing, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't know. What do you two think about that? Like, I definitely when I'm not in that role myself, I personally love getting both kinds of feedback from my leadership. I like getting the drawovers or the exact, like, I would like the shot to look exactly like this. I like getting that stuff, but I also like getting like, hey, run with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, there's definitely something to be said as an artist where sometimes you just luck out and you're on the same wavelength as your like showrunner, supervising director. So then it's like, wow, they love everything I do. I must be amazing. And then the next show, it's like, well, you're a talented, like skilled craftsman, but now you have to learn all of the specific little quirks specific to that show, and you're not the number one anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it seems so much about communication, and like if you feel very strongly about how a section should go, you can't expect that they're going to read your mind. Like, either express yourself very thoroughly or do a little drawing, that I think that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, you're going to be pulled in a lot of directions, and I feel like usually the hope, at least in my experience, is at the beginning you end up touching more of it in the hopes that the people in the beginning will sort of learn what you want through your interactions and through observing what you talk about or how you draw it or the tone or whatever. And then the hope is that at a certain point people lock in and you need to give them just slightly less, of a visual like thing, at least from like beginning of season or beginning of show to end.
Yeah, I think, I feel like if there's a lesson, like if this was an episode and we were of a show that we were making and we were trying to find the lesson that we're trying to teach the audience at the end of it, it's for lack of a better phrase, is it like basically speak up, right? Like just now, Sean, you said like, if you have an idea or, something that you think can make the episode better, like speak up so that people know and can, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying about how I moved from revisionist to story artist to director, so on, is just like speaking up. I remember seeing, and I'm going to give specific names because it was a great lesson for me. Like, I remember watching Alex Hirsch before Gravity Falls. We were making fish hooks and he was a part of that. And I remember watching him. I was a revisionist and watching him, and the way that he talked to executives and like would hear their notes and process them and think about the note, what's the phrase? The note within the note, or the note, and how he would just speak up with his initial thoughts and then keep going. And I just kind of learned from that moment, like he was, in a lot of ways, he was just speaking up and then continuing with it. And sorry to go on a theme here, but I had coffee today with an artist, and they were talking about a similar thing where they realized like that they needed to speak up so that an executive at the studio knew what they were thinking, or that, would think of them. And I think there's a theme here to my day, perhaps. And I just wanted to call that out because I do think like it's important for anyone in this industry, but also for, those that are just getting into the industry. Like, it's hard, right? It's hard to especially a lot of us who have spent our lives kind of, in our rooms drawing, like we like animation people, we like to nest. We like to be in our little space and make our things. And suddenly when you find yourself in this team and, in this big, huge new industry, it's hard to speak up. And I think like the best way to find success in this industry is to speak up and just share your ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like what you brought up earlier is that you don't just point out the problems, you come with a solution to the table, because I feel like it's easy sometimes as an artist to have like taste and opinions, but it can be easy. I mean, I've made that mistake myself where I would just be like, oh, I don't think this is working, but then, and then people are just like, well, great, what are we supposed to do with this kind of thing? So I like that you brought up the
yeah, it's also, you also bring up this whole like executive whispering. Like you're like a lot of the times executives will be like, this feels angry to me and I want it to be more happy. and you're like, the whole scene is like a celebration. And you're like, okay, so what do they mean? Like I had an instance recently where a director was giving notes on a commercial, and they said, oh no, what it was a focus group. A focus group had commented on a commercial that we were making, and we had to try to decipher the note that basically that it was scary, and we were like, there's nothing scary in here, and we realized there's a little guy who is a shark, but he's like a friendly shark, but his mouth is downturned still, like a shark. And when you see him, there's not an explanation of like, oh, there's sharks in this world that walk around and they're your friends. Like, it's just a commercial where there's all kinds of different things running around, and there's sharks and there's pirates and there's whatever, but there's a shark in there. And so when people saw that, they were like, there's a shark, something's going down. Right. And like and so we were like, oh my god. And so we did a note where like the shark is hugging everybody the first time you see him, and like we were like, what's the note behind the note here? And that's, I think that's similar to how a lot of executives go. They're like, my gut instinct is that this makes me sad, but I want it to make me, this feels blue, but I want to feel yellow. And you're trying to figure out like, what does this note even mean?
Yeah. 100%. And I think you really hit upon something with the frown to smile, simple change, right? And your boards, like that reminded me of, building on what you're saying there, is like, that reminded me of on Sanjay and Craig. I think Matt Lazell and I had something that we referred to as just the eyebrow pass, right? Which was which was like, first things first, we get the board in and we do an eyebrow pass. We just go through the whole board and like try to tweak eyebrows, because exactly what you're saying, Sean, of like, it's just a simple movement in the eyebrow can make a character seem angry. And a lot of times, like, we as story artists are trying to get an emotion across, and like you're saying, Sean, it can rub some people in a negative way, right? Like,
we're looking at the whole face being a funny face, but then you don't realize how it looks to like just a normal person. Is that the weird term?
No, I was gonna say, it's not just like a normal person, but it's also like, sometimes we spend so much time on the drawing and we're like, oh, I really like this fingernail, or like, I did the like hair really nice, and then we forget the eyebrows in the middle of the face. Exactly. that they're a little too tilted downwards, and now they look like they're angry. Yeah. And
also excuse me, and also like, if it's like, let's say an 11-minute board, like maybe the story team was just so against their deadline or something like that, like they did the emotions right, but they didn't have the time to step back and look at their whole entire board and be like, wow, Sanjay and Craig are really pissed off this whole episode. We need to soften and that's why Matt and I would go through and do our eyebrow pass first and just kind of like see what that did to the tone of the episode. And honestly, sometimes like, if we would get what you're you know, Sean, what you're just laying out there of like an executive saying like, I don't know, the episode like just feels angry to me, and like we just did the eyebrow pass and put it in animatic. And I will also say that, like, then we also have the voice actors doing the voices, which are always softer or always more fun.
Mm-hmm.
But then it would eyebrow pass plus voice actors equal like, oh, this feels right now.
Yeah, I think that is so true. Sometimes I feel like voices can go such a long way, because I feel like, especially for like close friendships, when you want to have your two characters kind of tease each other, if the voice acting isn't right, it can sound like they're just being like really mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so interesting, because like small details like this, I don't know, sometimes in a script it can look really mean, and then like you said, with the right eyebrows and the right voice, it's like, oh, it's just fun now.
Yeah, do you two ever have that experience where you something in a script or an outline and you're just like immediately rubbed the wrong way? You're like, oh no, I can't do that. That is just like, the character would never say that to me. Like, that just feels and then and sometimes you're right, and then sometimes, like, have you ever had the experience where you go, all right, well, but it's what they want, and you just do it, and then you're like, oh, I see how it works now, though. Like, they were right, I was wrong. I don't know. I've had that a few times.
I think what's so funny, like the show that I'm on currently, our showrunner does a tone meeting at the beginning, and it is so cool because we'll go together over the script, and she'll be like, okay, so this is the vibe, this is the tone, this is like this movie, this is like this and that. And it like changes the script like drastically, and it's like, wow, I see it in like a completely different light now, and this is so useful to understand your vision, because there's only so much you can get through to your audience with just a script.
Right.
I don't know, it's like, it's not exactly in like the mean thing, but it is like, oh wow, now this is like 100 times funnier, because like how all of this is gonna play. It's gonna play, like, even though what they're saying is super goofy, we're gonna play it dramatic, and now it's extremely funny.
Yeah. That's awesome. Right. That's a really cool thing that they do on the production you're on. Like,
I like
did you say it's called a tone launch or something? What was it called?
Yeah, a tone meeting, and that's the first time I've ever came across that. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And also, it really helps to have like a showrunner who has a very strong sense of comedy, of what, like, you know, they want to do. And so I just thought, I was like, oh, that's a cool thing, and I've never had that on any other show before, and I was like, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I think that sounds like the kind of thing, and this kind of fits in our theme yet again, but that kind of sounds like the kind of thing that I've noticed the best showrunners, they also are always kind of trying to find things like you're describing there, V, where they're trying to find the most productive, the best ways to communicate to their team. They're constantly trying to make themselves better communicators, and trying to find where they're failing at it, right? And get their vision across. So something like the person that you're working with right now, just having this idea of this tone meeting to try to get their vision across. And yeah, I mean, like, that's huge. The best showrunners do things like that to make their show as good as possible, because it is, again, collaborative, and we are all trying to do what this one person has the idea of. Yeah. Sorry, Sean, what was that?
And you don't have to like do the same thing that everyone has always done. Like, like I found it really interesting over the years, like figuring out, like, it's basically like the person who's show running is sort of like figuring out, okay, what makes the biggest difference on this show? I've been on shows where the biggest thing is that they have really crazy backgrounds, and the way that they want to do it is they build it like a dollhouse. And so in the first time you ever meet, or the first time you ever talk about something, you're setting up, like, you're pitching them wide view dollhouses. You're not pitching them shots, you're pitching them a wide view dollhouse. You're pitching them setups. But on other shows, you might have it be like the thing that they want to know are the main story beats, so you're pitching a beat board. Rather, they want to hear the scene, they want to see the main scene to scene gags, but they don't want to see every shot. And then, yeah, I mean, some shows, like you're saying, it's like a tone meeting, and I think that it's cool that, like, you're able to look at from show to show, like, what's the most important thing to this creator about, like, getting everyone else on the same page.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think what I'm about ready to describe is a little bit, is very much on the management side. It's not creative at all. Well, maybe a little bit, but very much on the management side of the showrunner's job and everything. But something that when I was showrunning I Heart Arlo, and you know what, I think we even did it on the movie Arlo the Alligator Boy, but we fine-tuned it by the time we got to I Heart Arlo. And credit to our line producer, Eric Vesbit, as well on this, because he was my partner in this, was we would do a meeting on the first day for everybody, right? Like whether it was just one PA that was starting that day, or if it was, you know, the whole entire background department starting that day, right? We would have one meeting where onboarding, right? It was essentially an onboarding meeting, but we were doing it as a production versus like a studio, right? And we were sitting down with whether it's a PA or an entire creative department, we were sitting down and saying like, all right, so this, like, I would pitch the show, right? I would tell them the creative vision of the show and what we're going to do in this season. I would try to do that in 5 to 10 minutes. And then we would explain to them like what they can expect from us, right? And then what we expect of them, you know, and then share our philosophy of communication, right? Like I think what we were trying to do was get them excited about the project that we're going to make right off the bat, and then be clear about the expectations of what they, you know, again, what they can expect from us and what we expect of them, and then really try to nail down, like, from this, we have been, you know, just outright, like, telling you exactly everything, and, like, we want this communication to just stay open throughout this whole production. If you see something that you feel like can be better, whether it's the way that we handle a meeting or the way that we handle our backgrounds or our voice records or whatever, tell us, you know? So I really found that meeting as being like a great starting point for a production, in a similar way to what you were describing, V, with your current experience with that tone meeting, you know?
Yeah, and I think what you're describing is so great, because also, like, you know, running somebody through not only like the creative vision of the show, but also something that I've noticed personally hopping from a show to another is like everybody's role in the production. And it's nice when someone explains to you like, oh, this is like the line producer, and this is all of the kind of issues you should reach out to them for, like, and this is the person you're going to talk to for like your time cards, and if you have any like questions about like designs or I don't know, or scripts or whoever, these are like the different coordinators and or PAs. And I feel like sometimes that can be like so overwhelming when you start and there's like already like 40 people or something. No, I'm joking, there's maybe like less, but it's like, okay, who do I talk to who for what, and what's the proper canal to go through to ask for like either time off or to ask for like
water.
A creative, you know, for water.
The water department. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
I feel like so we were kind of asking about the nitty gritty of like how you jump from a shit to another, and we managed to get to how you jumped to supervising director. But then can you tell us how you got to showrunning? Like how did you make that jump?
Yeah, you know, I think I risk getting into the minutiae of it all. I risk getting too detailed and everything. But, so I was doing the supervising directing thing on Sanjay and Craig for a couple of seasons, and I loved it. And that opportunity just kind of led to, I shouldn't say that, just kind of. That's literally what you're wanting to know. So I was doing that, and, you know, I'll give the specifics because it fits with that, you know, right place, right time / working hard front. So I was doing the supervising directing thing on Sanjay and Craig. Meanwhile, two people that I had worked with previously on Sanjay and Craig season 1 were two people named Thurp Van Orman and Ryan Kriego, moved over to DreamWorks TV and had developed Home Adventures with Tip and O as a series. And so I had a very good working relationship with them. They just knew my my creative voice and my drive to just always make every episode the best I possibly can. Mm-hmm. And so there I was, supervising, directing, and again, timing with like Nickelodeon had a last minute meeting thrown on the calendar.
Oh no!
Yeah.
No, it's never good.
Never good. And they were
3 more
like,
seasons. Congratulations!
Right, I wish, right? It wasn't the you're canceled, but it was like, we're not going to immediately pick you up for another season. And of course, that really, like, I'm just gonna. Who knows who all listens to this, but like, that's cancellation, right?
Yeah.
And so that happened, and then literally just a few days later, my friends over on Home called, and we're talking about an opportunity over there, and it was a difficult decision and a difficult time. But you two, please tell me if I'm spending too much time talking about the details of each thing. But what that looked like was they were offering to let me continue doing what I was doing on Sanjay and Craig, which was supervising, directing, meaning working with the whole entire story team and making my episodes as, through the animatic room and locking that animatic. That was like my responsibility on Sanjay and Craig, was to make the episode as good as I could to animatic lock, and then it was out of my hands. But what Home was offering was a supervising producer job that was all of that plus post. So like when the animation came back, I was sitting in that edit bay, doing take 1s, take 2s, calling for revisions on the animation, and then taking it to sound effects and taking it to composer and working with composer and just going through all that, also voice records. I was doing voice records as a supervising director some. So it was all of that. I was also working in the writer's room, so it was just a bigger piece of the whole production. Mm-hmm. And so I'd done at least 2 seasons as a supervising director at that point, and I'd been working on Sanjay and Craig, and I'd been working hard and trying to make each episode as like better and better and better. And so this opportunity came up, and I was the right person for it, right? And so I took that, and gosh, we made so many episodes of Home, and I need to clarify that, like, I don't even remember how many episodes I made. I tried to update my IMDb with it, and I just kind of stopped at some point because I was like, I gotta get back to my real job, So
but that's crazy that they didn't.
Yes.
That's weird that they didn't update it.
I agree with you. Some studios are great at that. Yeah. That's where I'll stop that sentence.
I got you.
Yeah.
And then to kind of finish the answering the question of leading to the showrunner thing. So I did that show, a lot of episodes, and also directed like a holiday special with that, and then that was all with Ryan Kriego as the showrunner, and he then later sold Arlo. He created Arlo the Alligator Boy and sold it to Netflix. And this is when Netflix was really popping off and huge. This was 2018, and he needed someone to come over and be his second in command. And so that, through some conversations, that ended up being me. And just out of our agreement and the deal and everything was just, I don't know. Am I getting too into the details?
No, I love this.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, I like that you said conversation.
Yeah,
what
was the conversation you want to? And you were like, yes.
Yeah. Well, the conversation was like, Ryan and I are friends, and we're collaborators, and like, this is also a business, right? And so like, we were having the conversation of what do you want to do, what do I want to do, and all that. And, he was cool enough to let me have the opportunity of showrunning that series. I was co-executive producer and showrunner, as, I'll call out, I'm sure you've said on other episodes of your podcast, like, showrunner's just it's not written down anywhere. It's not on IMDb, or anything like that. But that was our conversation and the deal that we worked out and everything, and I appreciate it from him. He definitely gave me an opportunity there. And anyway, so in that case, it was just building on, right? Like I built on supervising director to supervising producer, moving from there to this opportunity. It was everything that I did as supervising producer, but also it was, I was in the writer's room from day one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
I broke every story with the writing team. And so I knew the show inside and out. It's Ryan's creation. He also had final say, like I pitched to him everything that we were doing, like that's kind of the balance, right, of this collaboration at that level, right? Like he was the creator and he was executive producer. I was co-executive producer making the series for him while he was still making the movie at the same time. And so, yeah.
Wow.
And so I was going to him saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing an episode where Arlo, blah, blah, blah. Does that feel within your vision? And yes, no, yes, and whatever. And we would just keep going from there. So anyway, I got tangent there, but the show running gig was building upon that supervising producer gig, but just more in the heart of it, right? From the very beginnings of an idea of a story all the way to the very end was June of 2021, and we had all gotten our shots from COVID at that point. We were able to mix our final episode in person. It was amazing.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What a way to like kind of wrap up.
Yeah.
That is so cool. That must be like, I don't know what the word is. It's not scary, but like what is it like steering the ship for somebody else and sometimes having to make decisions when that person might not be available, I guess.
Yeah.
How does that feel? How did you guys work it out? Like, because I don't know. I feel like that could be kind of scary if you're like, oh my God, is he gonna like what I'm like approving right now?
Yeah. Ryan and I were lucky in that we had so many years of knowing one another and working together. Again, we made a lot of episodes of Home together and like a season of Sanjay and Craig together before that. So he and I really knew each other's creative voices, so he trusted me, and I was able to come on to Arlo. He had a script for the movie at that point, but like I think I was hired number 2 or 3. Israel Sanchez, the art director, I think he and I started on the same day, So my point there is that like I was there from very early on, and so he trusted me, which was amazing, and it's all built on that experience, those experiences that we had together before. Now I think like that's not always the case, right? Like sometimes we're working on a project that who knows where the original idea came from, and your showrunner or director boss is the person that pitched an angle at that idea that the studio liked, and I might be getting lost in the answer right now, V, but I think that like it's always, I was lucky with Arlo and that I had that relationship with Ryan, and I think in other cases we kind of go in and have to build that relationship pitch by pitch, right?
Yeah. Right.
No, that's great. I love to hear that, because I feel like there's so many different like experiences and ways like these collaborations work. So I think it's just great to hear that you and Ryan like knew each other so well, and so there was like a baked in like level of trust that you felt pretty confident going into the series.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, totally.
We do have questions from our listeners.
Okay.
Our patron Puzzle Glum asks, what are the biggest differences between working in TV and features, and which do you prefer? Haha.
Oh, that's a hard one. That's a hard one for sure. So, yeah, so we made Arlo the Alligator Boy at Netflix, which was rad, but Netflix was very like new at the time, right? And so we kind of found our way through making that. And so I'm currently, I think it's safe to say, since it's on my LinkedIn, I'm currently like a story artist on a feature at Sony. And so I feel like I'm only now really getting the feature experience, right? And so I'm kind of talking through the question, trying to find my answer. This is my answer. My heart has always been with series. I really love knocking out episode after episode and just building a world from episode to episode. And I think that that's the charm that a lot of people find. And for your listeners, like, that's the big difference to me. And I guess the way that actors talk about going from acting in a live action movie to acting in one of these, like, you know, prestige television shows, like, you get to really grow the characters and really maybe change the path of the narrative through series. And that's just exciting.
Yeah.
You know, my limited experience with features so far, I've really enjoyed. I don't know, you know, Sean, I'll throw it to you two. What are your, you know, can you yes and me here?
Oh, I feel like for me, I have also like a limited experience of feature because I've only been on like 2 features so far, and I totally relate to what you're saying. I think I just like the fast pace of TV. I think that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah.
I feel like I understand the appeal of feature and how you can really do stuff that is impossible to do in TV. Like, for example, crazy camera angles. You can really push the cinematography.
Yeah.
You can really go into like money shots all the time because a lot of time feature is 3D. But I think for me, at the end of the day, I like what you just said. Like, I like growing the characters and spending a lot of time with the characters. I feel like feature, even though you spend a lot of time on a little bit of you spend a lot of time working on a product that ends up being a pretty short runtime compared to TV. And so you have so little time to get the audience to care about your character, but also be interested in the plot. And it's so hard. Whereas I feel like for TV, because people know the characters, and after a couple episodes, there's a lot of stuff that you don't have to set up anymore compared to feature. So I think there's such different beasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like not even just the idea of working on one or the other. I think that I just tend to like TV cartoons more than movie cartoons. Just like the storytelling style, the humor, the writing. I mean, most of the cartoon movies I like end up being based on the television version of that thing, so it feels similarly. And I think that's just a style of comedy that I like more. I tend to like the TV stuff a little bit more. But I also admittedly have not worked as much in movies, and my experience with movies has been more of like the direct-to-TV thing, which is almost like working on a series.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah, we're like TV brained.
We're TV brained. I'm definitely enjoying feature. I want to be clear that it's not that I'm not enjoying feature. It's that I definitely don't feel like I have so much hindsight, right, with TV that I can like put a fine point on what I truly love about it, and I think I'm still in it. I'm still early in it with feature, that I can't really quite define what it is that I love about it yet. But I will say that like the drive to make, you know, and this goes back to what I was talking about a little bit with my career, but like the drive to make the movie, to make each sequence as good as possible or better than possible in feature is very inspiring, and I connect with that a lot. And I think that it takes a lot of persistence and patience to continue to work on the same sequence over and over and over and over again until it's ready to go into animation and feature. And that is very different from television, because with television, usually you have this bar schedule and you need to get that episode out the door so it can get animated. and there's a lot of charm to that, and there's a lot of excitement to that. But someone once said that like in TV animation, we make it as good as we can till we have to ship it, you know? And so yeah, that's a difference to me. So
Yeah, that's so funny. I don't know if I ever said that on this podcast, but I have a friend who came on the pod actually, and he told me, "Oh yeah, feature is like driving a car in donuts in the parking lot and until the moment that it you lose control and it crashes into a wall." Like,
Yep.
That's an interesting way of explaining that.
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you just go in circles until you can't anymore. That was so funny.
Yep.
That was just
Absolutely.
so funny.
Or
That's
or
great.
until you draw something really cool in the skid marks, you know?
Yeah.
I'm curious because we've mainly talked about work on shows and that is totally okay to be the only thing that you're thinking about, but I'm also curious what does your creative expression outside of these shows
Yes.
look like? Do you enjoy doing illustration comics? Like, do you make pitches? Like, I know that you have a child now, so
Right.
that might not be as frequent, but I'm curious about what that drive for you is like, or is your whole motivation like, I want to make these shows and then
Right.
I'm satisfied, like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question, and I think like it's an important one right now. I think a lot of people are talking about the balance of all that. So for a lot of my career, it was animation, animation, animation. It was TV animation. It was pitches. It was me spending my extra time working on my pitches and and pitching those, and I had success in selling some projects and all that, and most of them didn't go past pilot, but I am one who thrives in that studio setup where
Mhm.
there's a bar schedule. So every time that I've tried to do my own like short
Sure.
or comic, I've failed because I'm not good at that. So, but these days, yes, you're right. Fatherhood is definitely my number one pastime, but I'll be honest, like my creative energy does go into my job 100%
Sure.
right now. My pastimes right now, I run a lot. I'm a runner.
Ah.
I love it, and I talk too much about it. I probably talk second. It's like I talk a lot about my daughter, and then I talk a lot about running.
How many marathon did you run?
I've run 6 marathons at this point,
Oh
and
my God. What do you run into or from?
dude, it is meditation for me. It is like, yeah, like I don't listen to music or anything. It's like I'll go on Saturdays, I'll go on long runs, usually my shortest long run is 10 miles. Now I'm talking too much about running. But my shortest long run is like 10 miles, and like I'm just out there without headphones on, just in my head.
Just
Sometimes
raw dog in silence?
right? Yeah.
What?
Sometimes I'm thinking about like how the hell am I going to make it up this hill? But also sometimes I'm thinking about like the story issues I'm having on my job, or I'm thinking about like the issues I'm having as a parent, right? And it's meditation. It's mental health as much as it is physical health. So.
Yeah.
I think like not to go into a bigger tangent, but
Yeah.
I think that what you're bringing up is so relevant to today's day and age. I watch a lot of like for people who listen to Creative Block on the regular, they know that I'm a big fan of Dr. K, and that's one of the things that he
Mhm.
says a lot is like now with phones, our mind is always taken away from ourselves. We're
Mhm.
always like looking at like a video, we're reading a tweet, and we're never really bored or like spending time with ourselves. And I feel like the way you're describing it, running it sounds just very nice and healthy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no, I think you're right, though. I do think it's like, I mean, I do have my phone on me when I run, but that's in case of emergency.
yeah.
Yeah, but when you look at it, everything's jiggling all around. You can't.
Right, exactly. You can't figure out what that text message is at all. But yeah, I think you're right. I think, I think that way back when I was in college and doing my internships, I remember watching extra or the special features on a Pixar film on like The Incredibles. I guess it had to have been because it was Brad Bird that said something about like, if I have any advice to give to somebody who's trying to get into animation, it's go do everything else. It's go live life, go have experiences, because those things are going to inform who you are as a storyteller. And maybe at times in my life I took that too literally and and should have focused more on writing or drawing or storyboarding. But like, yeah, you know, I think like it's really, I think what Brad Bird was saying there, I've never met the guy. I don't know anything truly about him outside of his films. But like, I think what he was trying to get across there is like what you're saying there, V, about like that health, that mental health, that balance, like that will help you as a storyteller. That will help you as an artist, you know?
I think about that a lot. Sometimes I feel like, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna say this whole thing and I'm gonna ask you another question because we have a lot of questions. But I don't know. Sometimes I get worried about being an animator and just spending so much time drawing in front of my monitor and not having other experiences. This is something that I think about a lot. Our patron Crackle Wink asks, since you've had a long, successful career, how does one stay relevant as an artist and learn to work sustainably?
How do you stay relevant?
How'd you stay relevant?
I think that's a great question. That's a great question because I think it's something that I do think about. I'm 41 and I am like, you know, wanting to stay relevant, and I'm stumbling around this question right now. It's hard.
Well, what does relevance mean to you?
Yeah,
maybe that's a good way to break it down.
Yeah, I think so. Relevance means to me that I can continue to tell stories that are in the tone, the voice of the audience that's going to watch them, right? Like that I am connected enough with our audience, which is usually younger people, children and all that, that I don't age out of that, right? Which I don't think, you know, age is, I think it's about personality. It's mental age, right? It's about staying connected and all that. So I think the way that I try to keep that going is try to keep up with what's going on in this world. I try to keep up with what's popular, and I think I'm doing a horrible job of answering this person's question, but I try to stay connected with all that. But now, and again, I'm going to lean on the dad thing. Now I really am like watching my daughter and watching her friends and learning from them what is cool to them, what they're interested in, and that is informing what I want to do in the future creatively to stay relevant.
That makes sense.
So I pulled it out. I pulled it off.
You did it.
You did. So have you watched Skibidi Toilet?
You were talking about Skibidi Toilet the other day.
V is obsessed with Skibidi Toilet, and I'll text V. I'll text V like, "Hey, what time is creative block?" And V will be like, "Phantom Tax, Riz, and Skibidi Toilet Gyat," and it's like V doesn't use human language anymore. Yeah, no, I'm not that well connected. I need to be better at it.
Everybody in the comments, tell us if you love or hate Skibidi Toilet. I know what they're gonna say, but I just have to say.
So I want to tell you that after our conversation about Skibidi Toilet, I talked to Pendleton Ward about Skibidi Toilet.
Oh my God! What did he say?
We were hacky sacking in the park, and I was talking to him about. I was like, "Have you ever heard of Skibidi Toilet? The kids are obsessed with it right now," and he said that he watched it and that he's like, well, first of all, he pointed out that it's kind of like we're looping back on a type of meme that was like 10 years ago, a little bit. It's like meme-y 3D animation that's really stupid. And also that he didn't really get it. but he did try to watch some of it. He was like, I don't know.
I can't believe that he tried to watch some of it. I feel like, I don't know. I feel crazy for bringing it up all the time. Listen, I promise I'm just going to say this and I'm going to stop talking about Skibidi Toilet. But
no, she won't. She's going to keep talking to me about it and not you guys.
I've been Skibidi Toilet pilled. Listen. It kept popping up in articles, like serious articles, articles from like The Atlantic or whatever. And I was like, oh, I guess if reporters are bringing it up, I should watch it. I don't know.
I mean, isn't it one of the most successful YouTube channels? It's an insane amount.
It's crazy.
Of like animation and YouTube videos that they've made, and all of them have so many views.
They do. I mean, okay, listen. We're gonna do a Creative Block special episode just about Sean and me talking about Skibidi Toilet.
Okay,
I
we'll
don't
do
wanna take
a
away-
spin-off where
Yeah.
I promise that I'll watch some Skibidi Toilet, and we could even watch a few. If you pick out a few Skibidi Toilets that you want me to watch, we can watch, and we'll do like a react one episode for the Patreons or something.
Let's do that. I don't
that.
want to take the time away from Blake because we do have more questions. On YouTube, Israel Sanchez 2773 asks, "How did you become so cool?"
I answered that question to him on my Instagram because he asked me directly. Israel, I am so cool because I shared my office with someone who is way cooler than me, and his name was Israel Sanchez. Israel was our art director on Arlo the Alligator Boy, and he is incredibly awesome and kind. I'm not very cool.
Aww.
You know what?
Friendship.
Dads are cool.
Hey,
to me,
thanks.
It's so important to be raising the young people of this country in a responsible way, and I think there's nothing cooler than a dad who's spending time with his daughter.
I will speak for all dads when I say thank you.
We have a question from Ink KG on Instagram. Thank you so much for your question, KG. We have kind of gone over what it's like to direct and produce and your start, Blake, but I just kind of wanted to give a quick shout out to KG. From Twitter, Eric Art 06 asks, "How was your experience working on SpongeBob?"
Oh, it was great. A lot of incredibly talented people on there. Also, a lot of incredibly kind people on there. And I could go down a long list of their names. Definitely want to call out Vince Waller, who continues to be incredibly kind and a good person, good friend, and Kenny Pittenger. My time on that was SpongeBob came out when I was like either graduating or like I was like in high school or yeah, it was late 90s, so I was in high school. So I don't think I was like, it wasn't like a childhood cartoon for me, but it was always SpongeBob. It was just like the biggest thing in the world. And I remember going in after being hired, going in to get like paperwork or something before I started. And the line producer was walking me around, and I was like, "Oh yeah, and here's Steven," or Steve, and it was Steve Hillenberg, and I was like, "Oh my!" Like it was just meeting your hero, And
wow.
Steve was just the kindest guy, and I never expected him to turn around and be like, "Oh, hey Blake, I saw your test. It was really good. Happy to have you on the crew," and it just shows you like just him as an example. Like I have this theory that all productions take on the personality of the show creator or showrunner. And SpongeBob is that case. Steve was the kindest person to me in the little bit of experience that I had, the little bit of time that I hung out with him. He was incredibly kind, and the whole crew was that way. So nothing but love.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
The next question that we have is actually, I'm glad that they asked it. Grace Craft from Twitter asks, "Any advice to," yay, awesome. "Any advice to animation folks in these trying times? How have you been doing?"
It's hard.
That's probably, yeah.
Yeah. Advice in these trying times. Yeah, it's really hard. I've never seen the industry quite like this before. I think all of us, every one of us, we're needing to take the time to kind of reflect on it and assess what it is that we really want to get out of it, what we really want with it, and push hard into that. I myself am doing that with just kind of focusing on story art right now for myself and rediscovering my love for cinematography and for the love of drawing the panels that end up being I'm finding my joy again in that. And meanwhile, I'm also recharging my batteries in being creative and in creating and preparing myself to one day again pitch something, probably, right? Because I do believe the day will come where studios are eager again to buy originals. And I do believe, that the industry is going to thrive again. I don't think it's ever going to look like, I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's ever going to look like 2018, 2019 again, where Netflix was blowing up everything.
Yeah.
But that's my outlook. Sean and V, what are your feelings?
I feel like, I don't know. I do think you're right. I feel like things are picking back up again. I do hear through the grapevine that like people are buying again, but I feel like it's in different formats. I do try to kind of read the trades a little bit. There are kind of like whispers of like through the trades, like networks being interested in more, what's the word, like older type of formulas. So like I've heard things like, oh, they're going back to sitcoms, they're going back to multicams. And I think that's really cool because it's like I was reading about how there was like a ton of miniseries coming out, but then the problem was that people would like binge it and then cancel the subscription. And now I feel like streamers and networks in general are like thinking back about cable and how that was. I'm like, oh, you have your new episode of your favorite long running soap opera or sitcom coming out on and I'm very excited about that because I feel like we all can use some stability. And also it's cool to have like shows that that are stable and like kind of build something like big like that. I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I'm me personally, just me, my point of view. I feel like I'm in this weird spot because I keep every time I was just telling somebody that recently. I was like, every time I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with this. And like I have like a really interesting opportunity show up and I'm like, oh, I guess I can't be done with it.
Yep. Absolutely.
But that is a sign that I think the industry is becoming like there's a new spring is kind of what I'm
That's a good point.
I'm trying to think if I have anything useful to say. So first of all, I agree with you guys. I think that what people are probably asking for when they ask for that question is, I'm graduating my animation school. Is there going to be an animation industry left?
Sure.
I think that the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I think as usual, there's going to be certain people that work really hard and are really strong and they kind of rise up, and no matter what the industry is looking like, those people are probably going to get jobs. I think that new people coming out, no matter what, people at these studios are going to be looking out for new films, new drawing styles, new tastes, new voices. And I think that is always going to be the case. I have a feeling that we're probably looking at, more remakes and reboots and stuff for like safe things, because a lot of these companies are a little bit in trouble. But ultimately, I don't think that any of this should affect what if you like drawing and you like art and you like making stuff, you gotta just just make the stuff. Make the stuff. Build a following. I know someone who crowdfunded a short. It was just $1,000 for a short recently. Amazing. Like just crowdfund a short, crowdfund a little mini series. Like collaborate with your friends and make stuff. If you need to work at a cafe or something, there's no shame in that. Working a quote unquote regular job is okay. There's no shame in that. I know people that moved out here, it took them like 5 years to get a job, and they just worked in the restaurant industry or whatever. But there's no tiptoeing around the fact that it's kind of hard in the industry right now. I just think that at the end of the day, I was talking about this a little bit recently, complaining about it too much won't do anything, and it's only going to make all the people that follow you scared and view you as a person who's only complaining about stuff. Just make art. Put that fear, that emotion into art, and keep making stuff. And that's all I can say. What we're doing, this thing that we're doing, the people that are going to continue and thrive and continue to get work are going to be the people where animation is their lifestyle. It's their life. It's part of who they are. Even if you weren't paying them, they would be doing it. And those are the kind of people who get hired too.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Grace, and hi, and I hope you're well.
Oh, so sweet. I think the final one can kind of like go about it pretty fast since we're sort of like wrapping up.
Sure.
Tiffany Rail 477334 asked, was it easy to write the stories for Sanjay and Craig? And what about Arlo the Alligator Boy? So.
Yeah, I think that Arlo was easier because I was there from the very beginning of every single episode, whereas Sanjay and Craig was kind of trying to build, I guess, on what was previously what had been come up by the writers in the writers' room, what they had come up with, and we had a very unique creative process on that show. So it was not frowned upon for the story team, the storyboarding team, to come into a story launch at the beginning of our rotation and be like, "Hey, we really like this one nugget of your outline. Can we build a brand new story around that?" You know, and the writers' room was open to that, and the executives were open to that, and we would then build with them, you know, and not to say that we would throw out every single one of their outlines as much as I'm saying that they were open to that kind of collaboration. So it was not easy to write, but it was so creatively satisfying to I think this is the case with all of these shows that I've worked on. It was so creatively satisfying to break, like to be handed something, and in a lot of ways you have to destroy that thing to be able to even just make it the way that they originally intended. So like get the outline and be like, I don't understand this at all. Like this, you know, not any good. And then you start poking your holes and having a conversation about it with your coworker, collaborator, or with those writers. And the next thing you know, you circle back around and you're like, actually, no, this outline's really good or something. So it was never easy, even if we ended up maybe ending up in the exact same place that we started, but it was always satisfying to break that story. And when I say break, I mean destroy it and rebuild it and discover that it was discover the best possible version.
Yeah, that is such a scary thing to go through at the beginning, but then when you get kind of like used to that process, it can feel pretty like exhilarating.
Yeah.
And we always like to close our episodes with the titular question. Blake, do you experience creative block? And if you do, how do you deal with it?
Yes. The answer is absolutely yes. I experience creative block. How do I deal with it? These days, I think that I deal with it with clearing my mind in other ways, and those usually being running or being a father. So I think like getting away from it, getting distance, and letting your mind focus on something else. And hopefully that something else is something that is refreshing and empties out all the negativity, right? And then you're able to refill it again and look at your project or your idea or whatever it is in a different light because you've walked away. That's what I try to do. That's one of the reasons why I run so much.
Yeah, I was hoping you were gonna bring back the running.
And speaking of running, we are starting to get running out of time.
I was gonna say I talked way too much for I'm sorry, and I had so much fun doing it.
Stop apologizing. We literally brought you on to the podcast to talk. You applied so much for being a guest.
Right up.
Yeah, that was so fun. That was really, really fun. And I love like all the details that you brought to the stories because I definitely think that is what we want to share with our audience. And I'm sure our audience also loves these details. So y'all listening, tell us in the comments your favorite little nugget, your favorite little detail from Blake's stories. And with that is the end of this creative block. Blake, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
Woo, thank you both so much. Sean and V, thank you so much.
It was our pleasure. And also, thanks to our listeners. Follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Like Blake. Huge thanks to our editor, Clements for editing the podcast, Marco for helping us produce the show, and Ibuka for creating the short clips that we've been putting out.
If you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews and access to our Discord community. Another great way you can support us is by commenting on this episode. Do you love Skibbity Toilet? Or liking, sharing, subscribing, all these good things. It helps the algorithm put our content in front of more people. Click the link in the description of this episode to follow Blake on social media and to check out our Patreon. I have been your host, V.
And this is my little storyboard song pitch for the end of my line. So picture a cave. There's a little cave. There's a little goblin. He slides out because there's so much mud. It's wet. He slides out. And I was Sean. And then there's a little, like little bats bring him a little cane, and he does a little dance. It's, keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Did I land it?
Yes.
Did I land? Did it get picked up?
Yes.
Yes.